Hi, welcome to Cape Cod National Seashore Weathering Program. Today we're going to learn all about what is weathering. So weathering is the breakdown of rock into smaller and smaller pieces, usually in place. We're going to be using an icon of Cape Cod National Seashore, and that's our Doan Rock. Doan Rock is a very large rock that was deposited here about 18,000 years ago by the glacier. The glacier was a large sheet of ice that covered all of New England for a while. And as the glacier receded, anything that was in the glacier was left behind and created Cape Cod.
Let's review. Weathering is the process where rock is dissolved, worn away, or broken down into smaller and smaller pieces. What causes weathering? There can be natural stressors, like mechanical or physical weathering, caused by a glacier, changes in temperature, gravity, or abrasion. There can be chemical weathering from water, plant acids, acid rain, and even rust. Biological weathering is caused when a plant starts to grow in a crack in the rock and the roots actually push the pieces of rock apart. That's called root pry. And of course, there are man-made stressors, people can use hand tools to wear away rock, and even large machines like bulldozers. The Cape was created by a glacier about 18,000 years ago. Glaciers are huge sheets of ice that can pulverize and crush rocks by pressure and abrasion into smaller and smaller pieces. And then the ice can transport those pieces thousands of miles. All of Cape Cod was left behind by the melting glacier. Let's take a look at Doan Rock and see if we can find any evidence of glacial weathering.
When you look at Doan Rock, you'll see these horizontal lines or striations. These are an indication that this rock has been scraped by the ice. So the large glacier, when it rode over this rock, left behind these striations.
Another type of weathering can be caused by ice. When water gets into the cracks of a rock and freezes, the water expands and it pushes the pieces of rock apart. Another form of mechanical or physical weathering is caused by gravity. As the rock breaks apart, gravity will pull those pieces of rock down. Let's take a look and see if this has happened at Doan Rock.
If you look at Doan Rock, you see the cracks, and we talked about the ice freezing and breaking apart the rock. Eventually, a piece of rock can actually become detached from the bigger rock, and gravity can drag that piece of rock down. Here at Doan Rock, you can see that this chunk of rock used to be way up there, and it split off and slid down here. This is another example of mechanical weathering. Another form of mechanical weathering is called abrasion. Abrasion is when something rubs on the rock and wears it away. That can be wind-blown sand, it could be a tree rubbing up against the rock. In this case, at Doan Rock, we have an example of abrasion right here where the rock has obviously been smoothed away. This particular abrasion was caused by people. This is where people would step to climb the rock, and over the years it has worn away the rock. Again, mechanical weathering.
Another form of weathering is called chemical weathering. After rock becomes exposed at the Earth's surface, it is exposed to rain. Water can dissolve minerals in rocks. After the minerals dissolve, the rock is not as strong, and very slowly the rock will weather or break down into smaller pieces. Some minerals in a rock are very hard, like quartz. Some minerals are much softer and much more easily dissolved. On Doan Rock, we can notice bumps of quartz that have been left behind because the other minerals around it have weathered away in the rain.
Another form of chemical weathering is actually caused by an organism called a lichen. Lichens are an organism that is a fungus that is hosting a set of algae. And these organisms like to live on rocks. But in order to stick to the rock, the lichen has to secrete an acidic solution that slightly dissolves the rock, making it easier for the lichen to stick to the rock. In the process, chemical weathering. Another form of chemical weathering is actually rust. Some rocks are made out of a bunch of different minerals, and some of those minerals can contain iron. And when iron is exposed to oxygen, it turns into ferrous oxide or rust. And we can see that in this rock where the little orange patches are. That's an indication that there's an iron-containing mineral in this rock.
A form of biological weathering is called root pry, and that's when plants grow into the cracks of rocks and help to break them apart.
All over the rock, we've been talking about these cracks that have formed in the rock. Dirt can get into these cracks, and when that happens, plants are able to grow in the cracks. As the plants get bigger and bigger, their roots actually can force the cracks apart. Sometimes you can even find trees growing in cracks in rocks. And this is called root pry, and it's a form of biological weathering.
Here's a picture of a rock with the letter T. Does that look like a natural occurrence, or do you think that is man-made?
We are at the Fort Hill area in Eastham, and this is called the Sharpening Stone. It's another large rock that was deposited here by the glacier, the same glacier that left behind Dome Rock. This is an example of weathering through human activity. This rock was used by Native Americans hundreds of years ago for sharpening their tools. And as they rubbed their tools on the rock, they wore away parts of the rock through abrasion. And you can see this is a very smooth area. Here are grooves. And this was done to keep the tools sharp, but it is a form of man-made weathering. This rock is a man-carved rock. It has the letter T carved on the front of it, and this stands for Samuel Treat. It was his property, and he was the first minister in Eastham back in the 1600s. So this is an example of man-made weathering. Somebody carved the T.
Humans change rock and act as weathering agents. These are pictures of large machines pulverizing rocks. Very often we can use rocks for gravestones and markers. Some of you may even have a granite countertop in your kitchen. All of that has been made through the weathering and the breakdown of rocks by people. Again, weathering is the breaking down of rock into smaller particles. The sand grains on this beach started out as part of larger rocks. Erosion is the movement of sediment. The sand on this beach is constantly being moved by wind and water.